What's up, everybody? My name is Tommy Sobel. Welcome to my podcast. Here we are for a whole new episode about one of my favorite topics, human design. If you have ever met me in person, the third question I probably asked was, what's your human design? And most people up until this point have said, I don't know what that is. Hopefully, if enough people listen to this, they'll know enough about it that they'll be as interested in it and excited about this manual for life as I am, because it is so helpful. I have been exploring human design for 3 or 4 years now, started with a few articles, finally read the textbook, and I'm still learning more and more about it. I mean, it is such a deep, expansive, in-depth library of understanding. And once I see someone's chart, or once I start talking about human design, I could talk about someone for hours. The reason why I love it so much is because 100% of the time, it creates breakthroughs for people. It always resonates 100%. And it is the only modality that's like a birth chart based modality, kind of like astrology, that I feel resonates so fully with everybody. That's also why I kept exploring it, because it just kept resonating and people kept having breakthrough moments. And so I just started using it and exploring it more and more. So this podcast episode is about human design. And if you don't know anything about it, or if you know a little bit about it, or you think you know what it is, this is going to answer all your questions, and you're going to come away knowing more about it than 99.9% of people out there. You'll be a secret expert on it. So what is human design? If your body was a vehicle, human design is the user manual. It shows you, based on how your human is designed, how to reach your peak potential. That is what human design is. And everybody is designed differently. There's thousands of different combinations. Everybody has their unique signature, their own unique blueprint. And what's great about it too is that often we see other people and see how life works well for them and want to emulate them, want to do things their way. We get inspired by how other people are living their best life. But when we try it, it doesn't work for us. So often we think that we're doing something wrong, that there's something wrong with us, but it's really just that we're all designed differently. Everybody has different components, and I'm going to explain all the details of this, but there's nothing wrong with you. You just have your own unique design. And human design shows you what that design is so explicitly. It is so helpful. The number of times I've helped people realize that there's nothing wrong with them, that this is just their human design, it creates so much safety and clarity and comfort to know, like, oh, I can just be this way, and this is my way, and this is okay, as opposed to trying to do it someone else's way. It allows you to start seeing your unique aspects as gifts and lean into them instead of seeing them as faults. Human design also is extremely powerful at helping you not only understand yourself, but understand all the relationships in your life, to understand how your boss gets satisfied, understand who to have babies with, understand how to communicate with your children or your friends, or who to hire, how to talk to the people that you hire. I mean, the list just goes on and on. It's so great for relationships as well, when you understand how you work and how other people work, and not expecting them to be designed or for them to work the same way that you do. So where did human design come from? Well, there's this guy, this American guy, I think he was from Indiana, and he went to Ibiza and he disappeared in the 90s. He disappeared for about a month. And on this island, it's actually one of the ley lines, one of these spiritual centers of the earth. But when he reappeared, he had a completely new name. His name was Ra Uru. And he had been spending that month in a meditative state, connecting to the higher planes of existence, basically channeling information from what he called the law of compassion, which is an entity up there I'll be talking about that in a future episode. So he came down with this entire manual, this whole concept of humanity and where we came from and where we're going, that's now called human design. And he started preaching it, and he got all these followers, and now there's these books and people who are experts in it. The big idea around it, broad strokes, is that in around the year 1792, humans evolved from being 7 chakra beings into 9 chakra beings. And so now we have basically what they call 9 energy centers, and our minds just haven't caught up yet. It's like we're living as this intermediary evolutionary species where our bodies are insanely intelligent. They have all the answers for us, but our minds, which filter a lot of our decision making, it's like using old software. We've got the nervous systems and the mind of the Neanderthals 200,000 years ago, but we have this highly advanced, mature system in our bodies that most people just don't rely on, don't listen to. I remember for most of my life, I felt that the rational mind was peak human. I believed in stoicism and felt like emotions and the body's messages were unimportant, and really just only listened to my mind, was like so mind centric. And I have a completely different point of view now. I use the mind to weigh pros and cons, to remember, to come up with ideas and be creative. But honestly, when it comes to making decisions, the mind is not designed to make decisions. Your body is designed to make decisions, and you have a specific energy center, a specific chakra or organ that is what's called your inner authority. And so we'll be talking about that as well. And when we listen to our inner authority, that leads us to our peak potential. It always will tell us what the correct next step is for us. This is why I like it better than astrology, whereas astrology feels prescriptive. It's like, okay, now I know this about myself, but what do I do about it? Human design shows you what to do about how you are built. It shows you how to interact with the world, how to engage with others, to take the next steps towards your peak potential, as opposed to astrology, which is like, this is your destiny, this is how it's going to go. You can't do anything about it. So this is just a lot more empowering for me personally. The other cool thing about human design, because it's one of the newest spiritual modalities from the early 90s, it acts as a culmination of all of these previous modalities. So there's aspects that come from astrology. There's aspects from the I Ching, from Kabbalah, from the chakra system, like I mentioned, and also the Enneagram. If you're familiar, or if you like any of those other modalities, this is the comprehensive one that brings all of it together and makes a lot of it make more sense. Now, before we go further, everybody has a chart. There's a lot of websites out there where you can get your chart for free. When you get your chart, it's probably not going to make any sense, which is fine. But I think it would be helpful for you to get your chart and pull it up so that as I go through all of the key things that are important to know about yourself, about the different aspects, it's important to see where you stand. I always go to Jenna Zoe's website where you can get your chart for free. It's just myhumandesign.com. And when you go there, you can just get your free chart and download it. And from there, you can see what I'm talking about. So I suggest you do that. Now, reading your chart. Let's say you're now sitting here, you've got your chart up, you have no idea what it is. Just know that what you're looking at here is a map of your energy centers in your body, as well as a whole bunch of other aspects. There's a bunch of numbers on the left side and the right side. Some of the energy centers in your body are filled in, some are open. We're going to help you explain all of that. You also have these 4 arrows near the head. All of these are going to make sense to you by the end of this episode. Now, the most important part in human design is called your type. There are 4 main types. The most common main type is called the generator and the manifesting generator. Generators and manifesting generators are almost exactly the same in most ways. I'll explain how they're different, but generators and manifesting generators together comprise of the generator type, and that's about 70% of people. So the world is basically a world of generators and manifesting generators. Most of the world has that type. I'll go into their main theme and then talk about the other one. So all types have a certain emotional theme. And for generators specifically, the emotion that they're most wanting in life is the feeling of satisfaction. The feeling that they experience if they are not living their design is the feeling of frustration. So for generators and manifesting generators, and this is true for all of them, if you are feeling a lot of satisfaction in your life, then that means that whether you are doing it consciously or not, you are following your design and moving towards your peak potential. You're doing what's quote unquote correct. And if you're feeling a lot of frustration, then this is going to be really helpful for you, because that means that you're not actually listening to your design. That's for generators and manifesting generators. The second type are called projectors. Projector doesn't mean that you project things onto others. A lot of the names are not intuitive, so don't get stuck on those. But projectors make up about 20% of the population, and the emotional themes for projectors, what they're most wanting in life is the feeling of success. And when a projector is not living their design, the feeling that they experience, which is called the not self theme, which again is not like the most intuitive word, but the feeling they get when they're not listening to their design is the feeling of bitterness. So for projectors, it's either the feeling of success and feeling of bitterness. Now, what's the difference between the feeling of satisfaction versus the feeling of success? I mean, you could argue they're very similar, but they do have a distinction. If you are a projector, you'll be able to share the nuances of what you are really wanting in life. Often projectors are desiring a sense of recognition. They want to be seen for their gifts. They want to be valued and recognized. And that sense of recognition is what makes them feel successful. They really want to feel like a success. Whereas opposed to generators, the feeling of satisfaction is a little bit more internal, where it's like, oh, I just want to be doing good work, getting my thing done and feeling accomplished. Like it doesn't necessarily require others to feel that satisfaction. Obviously, if you want to be a writer, feeling satisfied might be, I have a bestseller. So that does obviously require others, but the feeling is a little bit more individualized as opposed to success that might require being recognized by other people. The third type are the manifestors, not to be confused with manifesting generators. Manifestors are their own type. Manifestors make up about 10% of the population. And manifestors, their core theme is the feeling of peace. What manifestors want is really just a sense of peace of mind, peace in their body, peace. They just want homeostasis. When they are not following their design, manifestors feel anger. So they got peace or they have anger. So if you're a manifestor and you're feeling pretty angry, pay attention. The fourth type, the rarest type, 1% of the population are called the reflectors. I know like 5 reflectors. Every time I meet a reflector, I'm so excited because they're just so rare. They're such special people. Reflectors are unique in many ways. The feeling that they're most wanting is surprise. And the feeling that indicates they're not following their life path is the feeling of disappointment. So those are the 4 types. That's 100% of people. You are one of those 4 types. Chances are you're one of the generator types just based on probability, but there's lots and lots of people that are the others. We're going to start with generators and manifesting generators now because that's just most people. Every single one of these types have their own strategy. A strategy is the one thing that you need to do that will help you reach your peak potential and feel that positive emotional theme. And if you don't do this, you'll be feeling the not self theme, more of the feelings that you don't want, like frustration. So for generators and manifesting generators, their strategy is called to respond. Responding, what is that? Responding actually means that you need to respond with what feels like a hell yes in your gut or what feels like a no in your gut. So every single generator type has access to this yes or no in their gut that is going to tell them if something is quote unquote correct for them, is moving in the direction of satisfaction or moving away from satisfaction and towards frustration. Every single one of them have this gut knowing, and it is instant. It's something that you can access in any moment. So responding is actually something they do constantly. You might be responding to stepping outside and you feel cold, so you want to put on a jacket. You might be responding to an email you get with an invitation, and you might be feeling excited about going to that birthday party. You might get a job offer, but feel like, oof, I don't know if I really want that job. I want to be working on something else. And so it feels like tension in your gut. That is the way that generators and manifesting generators respond. And if you listen to that, if you just say yes to everything that feels like a yes in your gut, and you say no to everything else, that is literally all you have to do your entire life to reach your peak potential. That is your path to your greatest satisfaction, your greatest abundance, your greatest sense of fulfillment. It's that simple. It's not necessarily easy because, again, we have our minds that get in the way of this, that have fears that say, well, what if it doesn't make money? What if I run out of money? What if they don't like me? What if nobody buys it? That's all mental constructs and fear that comes from the mind. That's part of that ancient system that can get in the way of listening to that gut instinct. Most of my life, I just listened to the mind. I was like, ooh, I shouldn't do this because I'll feel guilty if I do. Oh, I have to go to that event because I'll feel guilty if I don't, or there could be a good opportunity. I lived most of my life making decisions out of guilt or obligation or shoulding myself. I should do this, I should do that. When you feel like you should or you need to or you have to, that's not coming from the gut yes. Because the gut yes is like a I want to, I get to, I can't wait to, I feel intrigued, I feel curious. There's like an expansion, there's an opening up to it, as opposed to the mind being like, I don't really want to, but I need to. Okay, so that's the difference. When you say yes as a generator to the things that you feel obligated to, when you should yourself, that is the path to burnout, where you are saying yes to the things that are a no in your body. Because generators are energy types in the way that they wake up every single day and they have a certain amount of energy to get things done. Generators are like builders, they're laborers, they want to build things. We're the get shit done people. I'm a manifesting generator, but we don't have the energy for everything. You only have the energy for the things that feel like a yes in your gut. So if you say yes to the things that feel like a no in your gut too much, that is the path to burnout. And generators and manifesting generators are the kings and queens of burnout because they feel obligated to saying yes to things they don't really want to do. They take the job, they settle, they stay in the relationship, they continue reading the book that they don't feel like finishing, but they feel like they have to. Generators are not designed to do things that they have to do. And everything shifts. Miraculous things happen when you actually do the scary thing and decide to say no to the things that are a no in your body, even if it doesn't make sense to the mind. When you can actually say no to what feels like a no in your body and say yes only to the things that feel like a yes in your gut, that is when miracles happen for generators and manifesting generators. That is when life can really open up and suddenly everything feels good, everything makes sense. Because really what we all want in life, we don't want the multi-million dollars, we don't want the successful exit, we don't necessarily need to be famous, celebrity, like all those versions of success. What we really want from all that is how it feels. And if you can feel satisfied by only tinkering in the way that you want to tinker and doing the art, creating the things that you like, even if they don't specifically make money, even if you're not sure where it goes, I guarantee you that that is going to be your path to your greatest enjoyment, your greatest satisfaction. Now, any questions? Let me know. But the difference between generators and manifesting generators is that generators have a linear progression where they just wake up and they kind of work on the same idea. I often think of my old boss, Steven Spielberg. I'm pretty sure he's a generator because he just figured out when he was 12 years old, I want to make movies. And then for the next few decades, he just woke up obsessed about movies, and then became Steven Spielberg. Whereas manifesting generators, they're the multi-hyphenate. They have many different skills, not that generators don't, but it's just on a whole other level. Manifesting generators typically have a non-linear path where they might start a career and then get bored and then start a completely different one. I'm such a manifesting generator because when I look back into my career history, all the lifetimes I've lived, I did neuroscience research, Then I did cancer research. Then I was in the film industry. Then I was a digital habits coach. I was a DJ in Hollywood. Now I'm like a spiritual healer. I mean, I've lived all these different lifetimes that are completely seemingly unrelated and sometimes also felt unfinished. Like I started developing an app for Brick, the digital habits company that I started, and I never finished it. And so manifesting generators can sometimes appear like they don't follow through, but really what they're doing is they're evolving quickly. They're supposed to pivot. And then at some point, everything merges into this beautiful thing where it all makes sense. I feel like for me, all the things that didn't really work, that didn't really follow through, me being a child actor, I never really got anything. Me working in the film industry, I never really produced anything. Me doing the digital habits, I never ended up making the physical product that I wanted to. All those things finally have become skill sets that have merged beautifully for me, where I'm like, oh, me being a kid actor gives me more confidence and skills to speak in front of people as I lead these workshops. I'm speaking more and sharing what's important to me, being on this podcast. The work from Steven Spielberg and DreamWorks showed me how to produce at the highest level and how to be an entrepreneur and to think big. My experience with the neuroscience research helped me understand how the brain worked and how habits were formed, and helped me become very curious about how the mind actually works. And so everything that didn't really succeed or didn't really go anywhere specific because I got bored, because there was something more exciting that I was drawn to, I'm so glad I let myself do that, because manifesting generators need to pivot. They're going to be multi-hyphenates, and it's going to create something very unique and special. Hopefully I'm at that point where I feel like everything's coming together. We'll see how it goes. And so back to generators and manifesting generators, they all have that gut yes. That is their strategy to respond. Now, projectors, they have their own strategy, which is to wait to be invited, to wait for the invitation. Waiting for an invitation might sound a little bit like responding, because responding is waiting. Waiting for an invitation is a bit different. The idea is for projectors, they're meant to sit back, to not initiate anything. Projectors are actually one of the non-energy types. By that, it doesn't mean that they don't have energy. Everybody has energy, but for the non-energy types, they actually get their energy from other people. And without that, their energy comes and goes. They kind of have spurts of energy. Their energy is inconsistent. Generator types and the manifestors are the energy types, and then the projectors and the reflectors are the non-energy types. And so with projectors, they're meant to actually just do their thing. They're meant to give their gifts. Maybe that's posting online about something that interests you or the artwork that you're working on. You're really just supposed to just go with your own interests, and someone else recognizes that that is a gift and they invite you to be a part of something. Projectors are actually the newest type as we've evolved, and projectors are actually the new leaders. Projectors are the new leaders that the other types need to invite to lead us. They see the big picture. They're great at creating systems that can work way better than the systems that have been placed in this world today. These projectors, though, they can't make things happen by asserting themselves and trying to lead on their own. It doesn't work for a projector. If you're a projector, you've probably experienced this. Like if you're in a room with a bunch of people and nobody asks you what you think about something, or at work, they're not really asking for your opinion. When you try to give your opinion and nobody wants it, it doesn't really get you anywhere. They kind of dismiss you. You might not feel respected. You might not feel recognized. And that's because you're supposed to wait for someone who recognizes you, who values you, to say, hey, you, what do you think about this? Can you help us here? What do you think? And that's when the projector can be activated to lead. And that's literally all a projector has to do their entire life to reach their peak potential, to stop initiating and actually just wait for the invitation from others. And it can be challenging because waiting is hard. And so there's a lot of impatience that projectors feel because they want to move faster. They can see how things can be done better, and they don't feel heard. They don't feel respected until somebody rises up and says, hey, how can we make this better? Now, generator types and projector types work really well together. Their energy can be really compatible. My wife is a projector, so I know that relationship intimately. It doesn't mean that it's the best intimate relationship. I'm just saying that there is a really nice magnetic energy. It's almost like positive to negative, like yin yang for generator types and projectors. It's also the two most common types, so there's an aspect to that too. When it comes to manifestors, their strategy is to inform. Inform is an interesting one. It's like, that's really all I have to do. It's very simple. All a manifestor has to do to reach their peak potential is tell others, inform others what they're going to do before they do it. That's it. Manifestors are a very unique type because they're actually the only type that doesn't need anybody else to reach their peak potential. Manifestors are the initiators. Manifestors also were the old leader. Manifestors were the pharaohs. They would lead all the generator slaves to build the pyramids. And so manifestors, they're the ones who can bring something from nothingness. They don't need to respond. They don't need to wait for the invitation. They literally are connected directly to source to bring something into reality. But manifestors, even though they're energy types, they're not meant to be the laborers. That's for the generators. So manifestors often can be seen by others as not following through. They don't like getting into the weeds or creating systems and managing the integrations of your website and all that. They just want to get shit started. They're the fire starters, and they have a very powerful initiating energy. Everybody also has a specific energetic signature to them. Manifestors have an interesting one where officially it's called they have a repelling aura. I don't really like that term because it has a negative connotation to me. I prefer using the term selective aura. So manifestors have a selective aura in that they are not for everyone. If you meet a manifestor and you vibe with them and you're really activated by them, then that means there's something really helpful going on both sides. You're compatible. But manifestors, they're not for everybody. And so sometimes people feel repelled by a manifestor. And if you are a manifestor, it's just important to know that, again, there's nothing wrong with you. You have a very selective aura. Your auric field, your energy is going to naturally serve you. It's going to naturally self-select. And the people that are not for you, that are not going to help you, or that you're not going to help, the people who are irrelevant to your journey, they're just naturally not going to gel. They're not going to vibe. And you don't need to worry about it because there's more than enough people that do. And so just honor your selective aura, or if you have manifestors in your life, they don't need to have the same aura that generators do. For example, generators have an appealing aura. Generators often have lots of people around them. They have a very attractive energy. Everybody kind of wants a piece of a generator type. Just take that into account. All manifestors have to do is inform. When you don't inform, that is when you feel that not self theme of anger. When you do inform, that's when you feel that sense of peace. So informing is the one thing that they need to do, even if it doesn't make any sense. You want to change jobs? Just tell your boss. You want to go on a trip? Share it out loud. Speaking things out, sharing them, vocalizing is very important to manifestors. Also, manifestors often need to hear themselves speak. When they notice what they're saying, that's often when they can get clued in about what they really want, what their heart really desires. Okay? So manifestors, if you have an ego center, which is the heart center, if that is your inner authority, then that means that you need to be speaking to hear what your heart is telling you and just listening to your heart. The fourth type, reflectors, their strategy is to wait for one lunar cycle. That's 28 days. So for reflectors, they're the slowest moving type. They actually need to wait 4 weeks before they can make any big decision. Obviously, if you're deciding where am I going to have lunch, you can't wait 4 weeks to decide where to go in the supermarket. But for big decisions like, should I take this job? Should I break up with this person? Should I start my own business? Reflectors need to wait it out. After those 28 days, that is where the clarity is going to come. when they don't wait, when they feel impatient, when they act before they've waited it out. That's where, instead of feeling that sense of surprise that they're most seeking, this surprise and delight feeling, that's where they feel that feeling of disappointment because they moved too fast. People didn't respond the way that they wanted to. Now, reflectors are, in my experience, difficult to describe. They're difficult because as you're looking at your chart, everybody has some of their energy centers or chakras filled in, except reflectors. Reflectors actually don't have any energy centers filled in. And what that basically means is that they don't have constant access to any of their energy centers. So when an energy center is open, not filled in, that means that's where you're suggestible to other people's energy, into what human design calls conditioning. That's where issues can arise, where other people's shit can affect you. So reflectors are kind of like the canary in the coal mine. If you see a reflector and they're super healthy, then that means that the environment that they're in is very nurturing and loving and healthy. If you see a reflector and they're unhealthy, they're frustrated, they're overweight, they've got bad skin, all those things, that means actually it's their environment that they're in that's toxic. Reflectors also, in my experience, have a gentleness to them. They have this innate wisdom to them. They just have their own energy. And there should be a whole podcast that's just understanding reflectors. Maybe there is, but they're very special people because of how malleable they are, how open they are. For most of us, we have some of these energy centers filled in. When an energy center is filled in, that means you have consistent access to it. It means that you basically are locked in there, that you don't have too much to learn and grow there. It's the open centers where you have the ability to experience trauma and conditioning, but that's also where you have the opportunity to grow. Those are all the 4 types. You now know more than almost everybody about human design, but we're going to go levels deeper. Okay. You ready? You're still around? Okay, great. So if you look at your chart, you have your inner authority, which is going to be one of the organs. If you're a generator, it's either going to say sacral, which is the gut. Again, some of this is not intuitive. So sacral doesn't mean your sacrum. It just means your gut. Or it's going to say solar plexus. And solar plexus does not mean your gut. It actually means that you are an emotional. There are people who are emotionals and people who are non-emotionals. If it does not say emotional on your chart, then you're a non-emotional. 50% of people are emotionals. 50% of people are non-emotionals. It doesn't mean that non-emotionals don't experience emotions. Everybody experiences emotions, but emotionals experience emotions in a much more heightened way. Emotionals ride these waves of emotions where they feel really good about something, like, oh, I love my job, I love my community, and then they feel really bad about something. I don't like where I'm at, I want to quit my job, I hate my job. That's an extreme example, but they ride these natural waves of emotions that are different than being triggered. Everybody can be triggered. Everybody can have somebody be rude to them and be like, what the heck? But it's almost like high tide and low tide, where they can't really control it. They just are in these waves of positive and negative emotions, and that's how emotionals live. And it can be very challenging for them. My wife, again, she's an emotional projector. I'm a non-emotional, and I get to experience what it's like to see somebody going through those emotional waves. Now, it's very hard to tell if the people in your life are emotionals unless you know them intimately. And if someone is an emotional and you think they're a non-emotional like you just don't know them well enough because they're hiding it all in. They're keeping it from you. But the emotionals go through these extremes, and that's their process. And so what they need to do, their inner authority as emotional authority, which is their solar plexus organ or chakra, is that they need to wait until they feel more neutral. Similar to how projectors need to wait for the invitation, similar to how reflectors need to wait for the 28 days, emotionals need to wait and not make any big decisions when they're feeling really high, really amped up, or really down about something. They need to wait. That can be a process as well. Also with emotionals, they don't always necessarily come after all that into crystal clear clarity. They might feel 70% confident about a decision or 70% not wanting to do it. 70% for them is their 100%. They're not going to feel 100% clear on something, and that's okay. 70% clarity is clarity for emotionals, okay? It's a lot simpler for us non-emotionals. We, especially generator types, we have that gut yes or no that we can access. Do I want to do this? No. We have access to that. And there's not an emotional process. Now, if you're a generator type and you're emotional, then you have both. There's a lot of manifesting generators with emotional authority, and same with generators. So you then have both. So you have the energy center in the gut where you're supposed to respond. Like, is this a yes or a no for me? Does it feel exciting or not? But you're also riding these waves of emotions. And so both of those are slightly different feelings. And it's really important to understand the difference between the two, because you might be feeling really excited. Maybe you just got paid and you're like, let's go to Bora Bora. And then you buy the ticket and tomorrow you're not in that high anymore. You made a decision too quickly and then you're not following your design. So you need to wait. Also, the difference between non-emotionals and emotionals is bigger than the difference between male and female. If you are not an emotional, you do not know what it's like to be an emotional. And if you are an emotional, you do not know what it's like to be even keel and not go through those emotions. Non-emotionals also don't like going through those highs and lows. They like being more even keel. And again, as a non-emotional, I experience stress and overwhelm and frustration and anger. I have emotions, but I don't like sitting with them. Their intensity doesn't take us over in the way that emotionals can be taken over. So it's just really important to understand that 50% of people are going to be different than you, whatever you are, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're just built differently. They're designed differently. It was a huge unlock for me, especially with relationships. Next aspect, everybody can manifest. Not just manifestors, but everybody. But there's two different manifestation types. You're either a specific manifestor or a non-specific manifestor. You can find out which one you are by looking at the top of your chart. There's these 4 arrows. The bottom right arrow is either going to be pointing left or pointing right. If your bottom right arrow is pointing left, that means you're a specific manifestor. If it's pointing right, that means you're a non-specific manifestor. What does that mean? When there's something you really want, I want $1 million, I want a house, I want a boyfriend, I want a gold necklace, I want a bunch of followers on Spotify, whatever it is, for specific manifestors, the more specific you are about what you want, the better. Instead of saying, oh, I want a promotion, I want to make more money, be super specific. Like, I want to make $250,000 this year working with 15 clients. Or I want a house in Malibu with a white picket fence surrounded by people that I love. The more specific you are about what you want, the better. Now, the world of manifestation was built for specific manifestors. They'll say, you got to be really specific. You got to create a vision board. You got to look at your goals. Vision boards work really well for specific manifestors. But then there's half of us, I'm a non-specific manifestor, where that doesn't really work as well. And it's not about being really specific. It's actually getting clear on what you want, but most importantly, getting clear on how it feels, how it would feel to have that thing. For example, if you really, really want to own a home, what would owning that home feel like? For me, it would give me a sense of security. It would give me a sense of stability, of financial peace of mind. Knowing what the feeling is for non-specific manifestors is the most important thing, because then what you want to do is you actually do the things in life that make you feel that way now. With non-specific manifestors, you might not get specifically what you want, because what happens is the universe actually comes in and gives you something better than what you thought you wanted. Specific manifestors and non-specific manifestors, it's really important to know what type you are when you're working on being intentional with your manifestations, when you really want to get to the next step in life, and maybe you haven't been doing it the right way. The next component are the profiles. Everybody has a profile, and if you look at your chart, it's 2 numbers. Both of the numbers are between 1 and 6. The number on the left is a personality trait that you're conscious of. The number on the right is a personality trait that's unconscious. So even though I'll tell you what it means, it kind of happens under the radar. It's unconscious. You're not really doing it on purpose. Whereas for the number on the left, it's a personality trait that's purposeful. So number 1, if you have a 1 in your profile, whether it's conscious or unconscious, that's called the investigator. A person who has a 1 in their profile, they love getting into the details. They love investigating, getting into the nitty-gritty. They love learning really detailed about something before they make a decision. So they're the ones who read between the lines. They're really great people to hire to solve a complex problem because they've read all the books. They know the manual front and back. 1s are great at that. 2, if you have a 2 in your profile, that's called the hermit. I have a 2. My conscious profile is a 2. So 2 is the hermit, and the hermit needs more time alone than everybody else. And all the hermit really wants to do is to tinker alone in their space, to do their own thing, and to build. But hermits are geniuses, and they don't really know it because they have natural gifts that come easily to them, and they don't see them necessarily as geniuses. They're just doing their thing. They like building their cars. They like making their music. They like writing their books. They like doing their things. And it's really important for the hermit to allow other people to pull them out of their cave to give their gifts. You don't want to be answering that call all the time because they need lots of time alone, but hermits only reach their peak potential by letting other people say, oh my gosh, can you please share your gifts with the world? You are a genius. Can you please show us? Then you've got the 3. If you have a 3 in your profile, that means that you are an experimenter. Experimenters live this life of trial and error. So an experimenter can't really see other people doing things and learn as much from it as they do experimenting for themselves. They need to try a bunch of different things. They need to lead a bunch of different lives. And it's through doing things, and sometimes, often, unfortunately, like failing, having it not work, that's how they really get to learn. So there's a lot of frustrated 3s out there that see people who are not 3s that are like, why have I not found my person? Why have I not found my career? Why have I not found my community? And that's because the 3s need to actually live in a bunch of different cities, date a bunch of different people, try a bunch of careers that don't quite work out to really know who they are and experience this process of trial and error. So that's actually not a problem. That's just how you work, and allow yourself to keep practicing that. It doesn't mean that your whole life you're never going to find your person. It just means that in certain phases of life, you're going to be going through these experimentations, and you're always going to be an experimenter. The next one is a 4. I'm also a 4. I'm a 2-4. So the 4 is called the opportunist. And if you're an opportunist, that means you're a people person. It means that your network is your net worth. You are meant to make an impact on the people around you, on your community. You are meant to make an impact on your tribe. So in that way, you're also not for strangers. For me, I found all my soulmate friends and clients and relationships, most of them, maybe not all of them, most of them have come from a warm connection, someone I know. So it's really helpful for me to be a community builder, to be creating situations where I can meet friends of friends and create more warm connections for my business. I'm not for strangers. The 5 is called the heretic. Weird name, but the heretic basically means that you are meant to come into a group of strangers, which is the opposite of a 4, whereas 4s are for warm connections, the 5 is for strangers. You're meant to go into a group of strangers to help them solve a problem in a time of crisis and then leave. It's called the heretic because sometimes if the 5 solves the problem, it's almost kind of like they're a mercenary general. Like, okay, we have this problem. We really need you to be a temporary CTO project manager to fix our website. Once you've solved that problem, they can kind of feel like you've overstayed your welcome, where they're like, we don't really need this guy anymore. Why are they still here? And so they become ostracized. So you're meant to not actually stay in situations after you've solved the problem. This is true mostly in business. It doesn't really make as much sense in personal life. But the 5, they are really great independent contractors. They're great freelancers. They're great consultants, great coaches. I would say that most commonly I see 1-5s or 5-1s as solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and business owners because they really are great at honing in on one specific complex thing that other people don't have the patience for. And they're really great at going into groups of people, solving a problem, going into the next group, getting hired basically by different groups and different teams. So that's really common. Now, the 6 is called the martyr, and that's also a weird one. But the 6 is interesting because they have a life that has 3 main phases. The first 30 years of their life, they live life like a 3, where they experience this trial and error. My wife, Cambria, she's a 3-6. So for the first 30 years of her life, she lived like a double 3, where she was really experiencing this trial and error, really having a bunch of things don't work. But then after year 30, you go into the second phase where you start to actually see all the things that didn't work and you start to settle in, you start to become a role model. When all the things you experimented with, all the trials and tribulations, you start to become a leader, you start to have more stability. And then finally, starting around 50, that's when you really become the role model. And that's where all the lessons, all the things that you've experienced, the things that you learned the hard way because you experienced it yourself, you then become this role model and other people look up to you and you become a leader. So looking at your chart, you got this beautiful combination. You've got these 2 numbers. One is a personality trait that you're conscious of, one is not, and that makes something really beautiful. When I found out I was a 2-4, that was such a huge unlock for me because my whole life I've just been fantasizing about going into a cabin in the woods and just doing my own thing, working on my stuff. But then when I would spend time alone, I would have this competing urge of like throwing a dinner party and bringing people together. And when I'm bored, when I'm not thinking, when I'm unconscious, that's when I'm like, I'm going to throw a birthday party or I want to bring people together. And so that's when my opportunist, my 4 comes out. Next, there's just 2 more things I want to share with you, and then you're really going to know so much more than everybody else about this. Everybody has one main gift, and your main gift is often called your main gate. Same thing. This also relates to gene keys if you're familiar with that. But your main gift is on the top right of your chart. There's going to be a number there. It's going to be a number and then a decimal point and then another number. So the first number is going to be between 1 and 64, which is interesting because that's related to the chromosomes in some way. But basically, whatever that number is, that relates to one of the gifts in human design, and that is 70% of what you're wanting to experience in this lifetime. So it's important because it's not your entire life purpose, it's not your entire life theme, but it's like 70% of it. So when you know what your main gift is, that can be really helpful to say, hey, if you're doing something completely unrelated to it, maybe it's worth exploring something closer to that gift. I'll put something in the show notes of this really great human design coach's website, which has a library that explains to you what all the different gifts are. Finally, you've got these open centers that I talked about and the closed centers. If you have an open center, that's again where you're susceptible to negative energy of others. Now, if you have a completely open center, that means that none of the channels or gates are filled in at all. That means you're even more susceptible. I, for example, have a completely open head, the one at the top, completely open. When that head is open, the people who have that open energy center feel like I don't know enough. For me, and if for you as well, or the people in your life, if you have an open head center, that means that no matter all the reading you do, no matter all the books you buy, you're never actually going to satisfy that. You're never going to really feel like you've learned enough or know enough. And that can almost be a form of productive procrastination. Also, I have an open root center. That's the one in the bottom on the middle. Now, a fully open root center has the feeling that I can never do enough. That has the sense of doing and grounding. And so what's really important for me, having a fully open root center, is I can struggle with feeling like I'm accomplishing enough and doing enough. And that's just part of my design. So I'm not going to go through all of them. I just want you to know that each of these energy centers have their own themes, if they're open, that are important for you to acknowledge and work through to notice, oh, hey, do I really need to learn more? Do I really need to buy that book? Can't tell you how many books I bought that I haven't even read because I have that open center. Do I really need to be doing more or have I done enough? And when you can surround yourself with others who have those closed centers, you can borrow their energy. If someone around me has a closed root center where they feel like they've done enough, that can help me feel like I've done enough. So you officially know all of what I believe are the most helpful, most important, most actionable aspects of human design. Most people in your life aren't going to know in this detail. They're pretty much only going to know the type. But what you get to do now is take a look at their chart and take everything you've learned and use it to help them and help yourself to reach your highest potential. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, would greatly appreciate any form of engagement by following on all the podcast platforms, liking, subscribing, sharing it with people. I appreciate you. Go enjoy living your design. Thank you.